For me, my own issues and my own way of perceiving them aren't so much I lost my leg, not like that. It's not having to deal with the slump of when I lost in the stock market. No, it's not having to take care of a pet dog or cat. It's not having to journey onto the wild lands and fight the dragon. No, it's literally, or not even literally, I should say. It's more figuratively in here. I'm living more of an emotional, spiritual, and mental battle most of the days, and even since then, it's like for what I go through, people may dismiss as being like kind of petty and worthless and kind of like being way too sensitive, I guess. But guys, I could suggest from being a Piscean maybe, but for what it's worth, there's enough that comes out of it that I think still comes down to some kind of like measure of like the true integrity of a person. If I don't have what are called so called literal losses and true tragedies, then what I really have gone through is just a different tragedy out of everyone else's. Because as I may have said before, everyone has a tragedy. You may not believe that for people who don't look like they go through enough like what we could again say as true pressure or truly enduring times and not having to worry about what they're going through, because even if you tend to care what other people think, or you tend to care about other people's concerns and their own worrying about what they go through, alternatively or similarly, you're worrying about what they have to think about and all that, not just towards you but towards their own lives as well. It's not as so much it's not so much a forced nihilism. I don't have to use that word phrase too much, but it's not much a forced nihilism to assume that nobody cares about you, or that nobody cares about your opinion. But there's truth to not having to set yourself free, because there is a truth to having to set yourself free. There's a way to know that you don't have to worry about what you truly care about doing with your life, and that happens to be a good thing overall. Again, my own issues, they tend to be more of a emotional, mental, spiritual kind. They're not technically physical, practical, reality based, whatever you may call that. But um, when you think about someone who comes to the line of saying that life is unfair, or admitting that, so to speak, it's not that like seeing that as a perspective. It's not that they don't have a depth for what they could see differently. It's just that sometimes people don't know what they could be doing differently, unfortunately. But you you're you pretty darn sure that it's just it is, again, just perspective. It doesn't have to be case in fact for what they say. It's just even what they can prove. They everyone goes through a tragedy. Everyone has their own advantages. They don't have to be able to tell you along their own line, being the last resort, last example of why do I have to be the last person to tell you this? Well, think of it this way. What have you ever wanted to hear for yourself that you didn't have to explain to anyone? If that makes sense. Like, being the last example to somebody to change is not a good thing. It's just it's not a good spot to be in. I've been there where I kind of white knighted. I kind of was like, I'll be the one to change this person and not have to put up with their bullshit anymore, or not even if they're not in my face all the time. And this being another example of people, but like, I'll be the one to change them, and if they still stand in my way, I'll just leave them alone and whatnot. And it's like, well, yeah, I felt that pressure because not only have they stood in my way before, so I wanted to change them anyways. I might as well, because what else am I going to be able to do? And it's like, well, there's plenty of things you could still do even if they still stand in your way, and you still want to change them whether they're your business or not, which technically, essentially, they're not your business. I try to convince about those people who try to involve their lives into other people, and not just me, where they involve certain aspects of their own lives with other people, which they don't have to, and vice versa. They know, and they invoke that both ways, and it's a tragedy for some people, including me, unfortunately, where you have to deal with that kind of a forced business orientation, which, like, likewise, and as a clever aside to that, not trying to be a hypocrite here, but there is a way to interconnect the world without being savage about it. This is like, you know what I mean? A good way to orient and contextualize that, but that's something I've always been advocate for, giving everything a chance to exist. But not like that. I mean, that's not me being contrary. I'm being sincere. But yeah, the tragedies that people have can always vary in size and shape. But for me, does it mean that what I went through never mattered? It depends, I guess. It's like if you want to say that I should just move on and keep going with what I'm doing, then absolutely. But I don't see my emotions and mental thinking and sentiment for like the spiritual woo woo I go through and or pursue and study and adapt to, and spiritual teachings, emotional context of my art and craft, giving depth to what I think about and affirm and all that. That to me is so important because it affects the reality that I go by physically and whatnot. The physical affecting the mental, mental affecting physical, all the encirclings of those things. So as far as this video goes, I didn't even really say what it was going to be about, but I was going to originally make this video about the my wiry LLC, like a little blog post video instead of an actual writing post for the site, because it's been already done the 2 weeks, so instead of just every few days or one day. But if this isn't a my wiry LLC video on the site, let me just work with whatever you upload on YouTube, and I'll go from there. I'm gonna make another video for that as well, for my wiry. But this is the my wiry channel at this point, basically. So at least most of the content would be, or most of what would be implied with it. But the thumbnail should be a picture of my wiry. I think it was something I made yesterday. I just didn't want to record overnight. I didn't want to be like that guy who's like, I can still. It was a bummer. I didn't wait too long. I was gonna get more rest, but as I Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention. This is more about casualties. It's like so I could add this as an aside to the rest of the video. You know how nobody is invincible? You know how nobody is also screwed either? Like I always said that before. You're neither impenetrable nor down in the dumps all the time. You're gonna always have your highs and lows, I guess you could say. That phrase used to irritate me before, but as I got better about people being what I would call apathetic and nihilistic and all that, not having to worry about what they go through, or not, you don't know, understand it, but not knowing why they could just neglect things the way they do, and still assume that everyone knows what they're doing or knows what they could be doing with it. And that's the converse of them assuming that nobody knows what they're doing. Like having the expectation that people already know what to do next, but not they never want to know what they're doing. That's a bit of a backwards perpendicular way to do that. I should say fast enough. It's a shame though, because people generally are not able to express themselves humanly as I would wish they would. And so I would always look into like animations and TV shows, looking for the emotional context that was inspired by real life, but that's the only source of emotional context I can find as a person in real life. If you know what I mean. That could be its own video by itself. But what I'm saying is that it's the casualties and the fragility of a human being that anyone can be compromised, good or bad. Good compromise, it means basically, not even basically, but like a good compromise would be something that you get that you don't expect, that you don't want, but it's still good for you. And a bad compromise is the double negative of it was bad and you didn't want it. You gotta look at that shit, can't you? I mean, you could, but just it's because everything is essentially for you, not to you. But that's just my own philosophy. Otherwise, that's still why I was still looking to like classical religion and Christianity and Catholicism, even in spite of all the other philosophies and spiritualities I do in the meantime, like occultism and astrology and all that stuff. That's why I'll still look back into the traditional religion every once in a while. Not to completely neglect when someone says all praise the Most High, whether they mean universe or God, or Messiah or Buddha or four pillars, whatever, 6 pillars. I think it's called 6 pillars in Muslim, but which got, oh my gosh, Angel and to an extent Hamza, who got into the Muslim stuff, which because they are from that Indian tribe, but like I didn't mean to say it like that. I can affect on YouTube, but it's like that kind of stuff where they know that they're not like there's a collab actually with Angel and Hamza. That's pretty cool, but I haven't seen it yet. All these modern religions and the alternative spiritualities, if that's the namesake of it, there are reasons why I'll go back to the originals as well as the alternatives. It's not that I don't know what to do differently. It's not that I don't know It's not that I don't have an entire focus on my vision. It's just that I want to still give things a chance to exist. That's per my own virtues and values. I give everything a chance to exist, even if that's not literal, even if that's not as much as I would wish. But as a moral human being, as I go full circle back into the fragility and casualty. When people are pulled out of your life, whether it's because your vibrations is not matching theirs anymore, you're ascending or descending, whatnot, and when you're the kind of person who, even without a woo aspect of this, even if you're the kind of person who just genuinely realizes that people don't have to stay in your life, and people don't have to leave your life, and whether you have control over that or not. Which, by the way, even if you didn't, you wouldn't have to be hard on yourself about it. The people that have to be in your life outside your control or with your control, people that have to leave your life within or outside your control, it's like it can be a shame. That's simultaneous. God forbid. It's like that's the thing, is that the human life that we have, even if you're the kind of person who would want to believe that that this is all we have, whatnot. It's like it tends to be fragile and humanistic, and very much casually oriented. It's not something that's to take it lightly sometimes. But in spite of that, we should be able to have fun with what we have and be grateful for what we have. I made the last video that was like a comedy slice of life kind of thing, and that was a pretty fun video to make. I didn't have to like just only draw 2 eyeballs and make it look like the only thing I did on video was pretend to have a different accent. Outside of the content I make for like 10 plus videos, which is almost always in someone else's house or my house, and then be like, oh, that's content. I mean, so be it. But it's just I enjoy those videos. Every like 3 to 6 videos I make per day, 2 to 6 videos per day, or 7 videos a week, whatever. That I chose to do on my own merit, and I didn't have to be like that. But I just but I add this side scroll caveat of casualties and fragility, because what does casualty and fragility have to do with knowing everyone else's tragedies are just as real as yours, and how it might matter to understand it, that the emotional context that comes out aside from practicality and reality, how does it all come together? It's like, look at me now making this video about all these topics I talk about without making claymation. Am I a burden to everyone who doesn't see me make stop motion animation? Of course not. I'm serving at least somebody every once in a while. I mean, I'm not saying that to be too literal with the statistics, but I'm fairly certain that even though some people still come here for the claymations, a lot of people still come here for the claymations, but it's not that I don't know that. It's just, but I have to like be able to do what I love first. I have to be able to do what I consider being my own destiny, and so to speak. It's just that's what my heart tells me to do. But I can still remember to be human and embrace some aspects of the discomfort of maybe even if that discomfort implies make more claymation whether I like it or not, or make more variety content videos whether that's necessary or not. It's still going to be whatever I choose my path. There is a humanistic certainty that, with all due respect, anything goes, and also more than that, not anything letting go in the flow, or even just knowing that the path is unwinding and unknowing, and we never know what's around the corner. But there are some things and mercies we can give in life. We can make sure that we're doing our best in certain ways that we don't want to have to consider sometimes, because it can be so pretty messed up to have certain burdens all of a sudden. But that comes again with the fragility humanistic stuff. People that we lost in our lives, whether that means people that we have to keep in our lives, whether that means, and good or bad for both of those, by the way. It's not the end. It's just we are still here. We're still here with ourselves. You have to remember to love yourself, for one thing. We're still here with ourselves, and wherever you go, you're following. And a change in location does help you understand that a little better. A change in location may not change everything in your life, but it will change the outcomes of the attitudes that you have. The attitudes to follow, how you perceive that, be able to distinguish that by comparing and contrasting how you felt, not only before and after leaving between locations, but what you thought when you were still transitioning, and even outside those realms. It's like behind and ahead of those. So usually that's just that's a kind of a half semi-hearted example of what it'll be like to move and still realize that you're still recreating the problems and solutions that you had before. Not just the problems or solutions, but, be like, wow, I left my hometown and I'm still the same person and I still have the same people in a different light. It's like incredible how that works, right? I haven't even left what my hometown is, or for the most part, but I already know what that's like for some reason. I already trust that that's the case. So I try to. That's the whole schematic of me being someone who doesn't have to leave his problems behind, figuratively or literally, whatever that even still means. I still work on myself whether I'm still the kind of person who doesn't know how to, you know, get some fresh sunlight, like actually be what people think I should be or some reason. Not in the worst possible light. I'm not saying that to be judgmental of myself or worry my criticism. What I'm saying is that um like the one video I made before, it was Human Game Console podcast number 5. It was number 4 or 6. It was episode 6, 0006, and I said something about how there was one thing I couldn't ever be completely honest about, even more than honest. It wasn't something I was necessarily avoiding. I hope I wasn't. It was the idea of life feeling real and objective and intense when I was a little kid. And what I meant by that in that little short video was that there are feelings I had in the past, like in grade school or in certain workforce arenas, or even just with people in general. These weird feelings that, philosophy or not, spirituality or not, there are these weird feelings I don't know how to explain in past and present that I not only, however, want to transcend in the future. I want to go beyond that past and present, but I want to be able to understand it a little better before I do. And if I can't, then I can move on anyways. But it's a feeling that I didn't know how to explain for myself. It could be the world I was in before pornography addiction. It could be the world I was in that no longer came to be anymore. But for the most part, people usually know that one truth that they can't really explain, that they're not hiding from or lying about, but it happens to be in their reality. And it's the same thing with everything else I go through. It's like, if I truly thought I felt like a zombie, then shame on me, and maybe not that hard on me, shame, but like, just noticing and being aware of it, and then seeing if it doesn't have to be fixed, then what I could do by otherwise. And if I'm not supposed to do anything, just listen and observe, and just notice how I feel. Just noticing how I feel. Thanks, Yash, from Spiritual Alchemy, or was it Beyond Alchemy and Spiritual Renaissance? Yeah, that guy, the Yash guy. That looks like my dad. That's why I don't feature make clips of him in YouTuber advice videos, is because he looks a lot like my dad. Oh my god. But it's knowing none of my family and friends that watch my videos, really, but not just the socialists and whatnot and everyone else. I love all you guys, honestly, but it comes down to like what I mentioned about Yasha anyways. I say that he was oh yeah, noticing how I feel. So those intensities of the past and present coming into my future would be a beauty, or even beyond that, transcending that. And then noticing the fragility and humanistics of why life comes about the way I do, when I say that there's a dozen actual selves which are all ideals. I said that in other content before, where if all those ideals existed, they couldn't all be actual selves. There's only one actual self and an ideal or more. But there can only be one actual self, because it's the most honest you can be about your own situation, whether you're still being literal or not about it, whether that's possible or not. And that comes to the idea of me basically over philosophizing a speech and debate, but those courses were pretty cool, honestly. At least when I was in high school. There's plenty to go around in this life where you could be the one guy to be like, wow, this post-era Otta Crossman guy literally just spends all day in his house not knowing how to leave, or not knowing how to make the most out of the things that he could still be doing, the claymation thing, the things that I don't recognize myself but everyone else seems to for some reason. Not being hard on myself about that, but I'm saying like that's the intensity that I reminisce and kind of felt like in my deeper childhood, is like those intensities and hurriednesses of it's so blatant, deliberate, obvious what you should be doing or should not be doing. Like, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you not doing that? And I keep saying this as if I am hard on myself, and I'm not. I know people won't believe me when I say that like 5 times in the same video, but it's like, but it's true. Like when I say subjective, objective in a Cursor Saga set of videos on all YouTube channels, which I don't even always link them on the description or the profile pages on these accounts platforms. But it's true. It's like there are realities and truths and facts about my life that I don't face directly, not because I don't know how to explain them or I don't know how to be honest about them, but it's because they're so real that even the weird white knight in me, which I said in this video already, the weird white knight in me who's like, I'm going to help the girl or the guy who's depressed and get an accolade reward out of it. be that kind of high horse arrogant. That's gonna pay off. Sometimes it does, but even if you actually earn that and you did that the right way, it doesn't have to be that way, right? It doesn't have to be that weird or cocky, but because that's how weird some people are about like being therapists um and whatever whatnot. Like even when the advice giving and the listening is warranted. There are times where even listening is warranted. People will literally deafen your mic, server deafen you if they don't want you to listen on Discord. That's happened only once, where it was so bad that it wasn't my fault, but there was like they were saying I couldn't hear. So I probably never have been muted before, but I've been server deafened once because it was so sacred and futile what I was hearing that I had to be like I could not be the one to hear it. Not necessarily me specifically, but people in general. Maybe whether I can be trusted or not. So what I'm getting with that is that there are some kinds of listening that are not permitted even then, unfortunately, in this chaotic and painful life. But not that I want to be pessimistic about that. But there you go. It's there are some kinds of listening that isn't permitted, let alone advice giving. And so people who assume that you only get hurt by what you know, and that what you don't know doesn't hurt you. There is a sincere reality. Okay, there's a sincere amount of people who are like, I don't want you to be despondent just because of what I say, and they're not trying to be assholes when they say it. They're actually quite the opposite. When they say I don't want you to be despondent by what I say, so I can't respond yet, they're truly trying to be nice. And also, there are some people who are really good and sincere, and even what you could say holy spirited about the MWAB or mind your own business thing. Like one of the other videos I made, it had a thumbnail of Peabody and Sherman in the Freebirds movies. In that 1 single minute 9 seconds, I talk about. There's one part of it where I say, instead of mind your business, I say try saying, not only that. And that was probably the only part of the video that didn't make sense. And like, what do you mean by not only that? What I mean is, have the inviteness and the invitation of allowing people to make connections with things, even if it's not their concern. There's if people truly believe there's a time and place for everything, which essentially that could be a sage fact, that could be a sage wisdom, not denying that, but hopefully I'm not saying that all the time. Be like, I don't have to. I respect your sage factual wisdom, but what the fuck? No, it's like, well, this life is gonna be what it needs to be, but whatever else. But what I'm saying is that there are people who, if not, this doesn't have to be everybody. It could be literal statistically affect everybody 100%. If it is, I'm not denying that. I'm not accepting that yet either. So unfortunately, but there are people who do say mind your business and they are good intentioned. What is what I'm saying? There are people who tell you to have none of your concern and they have good intentions. That's usually what they feel. What they say when they say that. That's usually what they think. But deep down, that's how they feel. Is that they're good intention. They're trying to make a disconnection. You know how pornography addiction becomes one of the worst addictions? It's when you think that you have to give it a chance to exist. When you're the kind of person like me who has the virtue and value of giving everything a chance to exist, and you give something that bad a chance to exist. And it's like, well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that addiction like drugs and alcohol and pornography, social media, gambling, workaholism, addiction's terrible. You could tell someone, oh, be invigorated, make sure that the addiction was worth it in the long run. But would you tell anyone else to have an addiction? Of course not. You wouldn't tell anyone else to have an addiction. So it could be 100% taboo. It could be 100% guaranteed, factual, don't do this. Never do this. But not just because whether or not it was good for their lifestyles or their life journeys, but you're not going to tell someone they have an addiction right off the bat, flat out, full stop. Not going to lie. To begin with, given whatever, you're not going to tell them to do that. So yes, there are things in life we avoid doing. We don't have to put our tongues on the magnet catalyzer. We don't have to do that crap. But like, but it's just we don't have to put our tongues in the chemical beaker full of compounds. Too much imagery. I know. I'm sorry. But people have good intentions, whether they come across as being punching up or punching down. I've been on both ends of that. I've been the kind of person who was punching up and seen as punching down seen as punching up, and what have you. And it's a very weird way to when you get someone to say something like that, oh, punch up, not down. You know that their perspective is still cock-ass words. It's like not there I go being censored on YouTube again. I'm sorry. It's when they have to mention that you're punching up instead of down, or up down instead of up, that's when you know perspective is still important, because their whole point of mission is about perspective, but they still dishonor perspective in their own way. That's a weird paradox and perpendicular of them. But and this video is still very much relevant to itself. I will get into the other stuff in a second about the humanistic stuff, the tragedies, emotional context, and by a wiry aspect of this video if I do. But people genuinely, when they don't want something to exist, but let's go straight to it. Abortions. When you don't want to have a kid that actually should not be there for any good number of reasons. And I respect the reasons that happen with abortion, even at living in a state where that is very much a taboo in multiple ways, not just the Roe v. Wade ones or the whatnot. I mean, Baz Fuzz, Zarius himself from Baz Fuzz, he made a really compelling argument. I wasn't against him on this. I already was pro argument on his end of this. I already believe what Zer says about why abortion is a thing. I already believe him. No. Okay. Baz Fuzz's argument was that the reason why abortion should be banned is because it's inherently a weird thing to assume that you should be able to kill your kid, even no matter what that means. It's like it's a weird taboo in either end of that. But the idea is that you should care about your kid even if you're not supposed to have them, and you should care about the decision to not have your kid even if you don't think there's a reason to have them. And it's like there's truth to that. It's like wherever argument you have for pro or anti-abortion, it's a weird dilemma to be in. But basically, when I say this, it's like there are people who believe that the disconnection of, and I can make an example that outside of pornography addiction or abortion, but let's say like a third example, like this doesn't have to be an example that makes all three connect to each other, but like let's say the example of connection or disconnection is introversion. Yeah, introversion. Okay, so people who have more energy when they're by themselves versus people who have more energy when they're around other people. The people who wilt on the vine like me, who without social connection we don't really cope as much better. But I still learn how to be emotional independent as per the other video that I made, hot and cold thumbnail. The emotional independence where whether you're with or without people, you're gonna not only be okay, you're gonna be happy. And that's not a forced affirmation. That's more like that's a reality of most people, if not all people. Is that you don't need to be on other people. You don't need to be with people either. You don't have to be with people or without them, but you certainly don't need to be with them as a cruciality. And how social life ties into addiction and hard decisions in life, as per the not as per whatever, as per abortion rights, so-called, pornography addiction, so-called, not let alone no from human retention. Social living, whether we truly believe or not that, humans are social creatures with social needs. Get out of here with that crap, please. I'm just saying that's just my perspective. It's like I used to be like that. I used to be like that kind of person who's like, why can't we just socialize with people if we have the opportunity to? I'm still the kind of person who's like, this is a world that is not extroverted. This is an introvert's world. This is a world. This is my opinion, by the way. This is my opinion, so that's mind me. But like, I'm the person who believes that introverts have all the room they have to go in the cabin in the woods and be all by themselves, and go into the Appalachians and go into freaking like Mars, like 7 million miles away, where there's still room in the solar system. They don't have. I don't know if there's aliens. That's another video. Imagine me making very content about controversial topics like aliens, well, like, yeah, but spiritual or not. But we can get into that, obviously. But it's my belief that introverts have all the time and the space in the world and whatnot to be by themselves. And the reason I disbelieve the extrovert world idea, the introvert and extrovert world versus the extrovert and introvert world trademark now. I'm sorry, like either one. But the reason I believe strongly in the extrovert and introvert world is because I think introverts have way too much privilege. That's my opinion. That introverts have too much privilege and control to be alone by themselves, even if they can't literally do that in every given moment. Even if they're forced to be with other people, even if they're still making sure that people who they socialize with don't judge them for being introverts. which is a bit of a weird paradox about that. Unfortunately, that's a weird dilemma to be like, you found like an introvert finally socializes, and all they ever hear is, "Why are you an introvert? Why are you an introvert? Why are you an introvert? Why are you an introvert?" It's like I can feel that, I can resonate with that, I can empathize with that, but it's like we're about to a third minute mark, but yeah, gotta be some word about that sometimes, but maybe. So the social aspect of things is a decision itself, whether it's taboo or mandatory. Am I going to tell everyone that's socially taboo to be around introverts who told you to leave them alone and you're still being an asshole and you get into really consequential trouble for that? Am I going to be the kind of guy who tells you that sociality is mandatory, and if you don't socialize with people, you're going to put yourself in more danger than even introversion energies imply about your life? Am I going to tell people that find it in between, a full throttle, a 0%, always do this, that, these 5, these 6, these 7s, these zeros, these -1s, -2s? Life is what you make of it. If you're going to be the kind of person who doesn't try to explore things in their surroundings, whether you have a choice to or not, and I bet you have a choice to discover the unknowns, explore the unknowns, and adventure into the society and whatnot, and not just the society, because life isn't just about the life that's here, if that's too deep for you. Even I know that for some reason, if I want to express it like that, but I just, what I can assure you is that it's always worth exploring the unknown, no matter what you think you can prove. I've been that shit. One more video I'm going to mention again is the non-podcast video. I think it was. There was a video that was found out about either podcast move or human game. It was the one about the provens and the intensities of life, and that was about like how you genuinely are probably going to want to be someone who tries to learn and adapt to life quickly enough, but also passionately enough where you're not worrying about what you can stick with and be stable with. Stability still matters. I mean, yeah, being able to be, if you want to be in comfort just long enough to realize that it's worth being discomforted again, then that works. But I'm not saying never be stable. Of course, there's a order to our lives that works with the chaos, but this whole video has basically essentially been about, so far in 32 minutes, it's been about why you should care about the vulnerabilities and the choices we make in life, in spite of having more power than we realize, in spite of having more to this life than we want to believe. And it's like, usually people are generally good about when they make a disconnection or a connection. When they tell you to mind your own business, or when they tell you you have to do this is objective intense reality fact. Or when they make sure that you're okay and then do nothing else as if you're an introvert, sad. Or they assume that you're an introvert, or they assume that you're an extrovert, and with the assuming that you're an extrovert, let's say that you're an ambivert that doesn't want to be seen as an extrovert. And that's not me personally. I still see myself as a pro-extrovert, but let's say that you're an ambivert who sees themselves as an extrovert. And what they do is that they see you as an introvert, and you're like, okay, different energies here. I can calibrate. I can negotiate my social life beliefs for some reason. Be like, I'll see myself as this, and you see myself as that, and I'm actually this. What do I do about that? Yeah. Okay, that's a weird example. I don't even know where I was going with that, but like it's like people trust that people have good intentions. See, there's a very cliche theme that works with this. See the best in people in general. Like, see the best and the most positive in people who may or may not have bad or neutral intentions. Neutral intentions don't have to be bad, but like, see the best in people. See it that whether they force you to be disconnected, or they force you to be connected, or they make it that they misunderstand you in a way that is still helpful, that still sucks, as per the honor curse philosophy I made before, where people, or even the pipe dream fallacy that I mentioned before, even more recently than that video about the honor curses. Those are fallacies I made like a year or two ago, but there's certainly a lot to get from people who even force you to be in a certain situation, or force you to be away from them. With the forcing to be with them, or forcing you to be in a certain situation, there's always something you're going to get from people, whether they disorient or prevent a opportunity or not. You might be sad that someone forces you to be when someone for the example one or two, when someone forces you to be with them or forces you to be away from an opportunity or forces you to be in a certain position. The first part of that is when you're forced to be concrete with them. So you always get something out of a situation, even if it's not what you wanted, even if it's not something that you believe in right away at first. When you're forced into a situation and you're like, in general, it doesn't have to be any abstract example I didn't mention yet, or solid example I didn't say yet. But let's say that you got captured by the enemy forces and that they enslave you into a camp, and you're like, wow. Well, at least they're not forcing me to not do something. At least they're not saying mind your own business and while I'm in this enslaved camp. All they're doing is forcing me to be intensely enslaved in their camp, but I'm not forced away from something. I'm forced out of my liberty and freedom, but at least I'm not forced out of a mental capacity for what I want to have as a connection, not just disconnected from my literal outside world. So let's say that's how you feel. Sure, yeah. They may have not told you mind your own business. They may have not told you, don't be weird. Don't be unnecessarily uncivil or chaotic. But you're still literally trapped in a cage, right? You're still literally stripped from your freedoms and liberties. You're literally a slave to the enemy forces. That's nothing to shake away. But does that mean but at the same time, does that disorient you in the worst possible way? No, it can still be attitudinal. It probably still is attitudinal. You get to choose what you believe. But make sure you're facing your own truths and your own facts. Make sure that on a literal level, physical level, you get out of that cage, you get away from the enemy forces, you maybe shoot down a few on the way out. No, I'm not encouraging violence here. This is a Christian server. But the alternative to that is the MYOB end of it. You're not getting your leg cut off. Did I say at the beginning of this video? I made so many clips already. You're not getting your leg cut off. Your stock market isn't going down under. You're not having to take care of a dog or a cat. You're not having to worry about things that are outside your control, inside your control, locus control. I mentioned before in the video. You're not having these anti-sentimental factors of your life taken away from you. Whether you could call them literal or reality-based or priority or not. You want to call that number one priority, be my guest, but I'm not trying to be mean there. There are people who get on my nerves about number one priorities, and I'm like, okay, at least they get to decide what their priorities are. I don't have to force it onto them. I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't even be able to do that. But I don't like coercion as one of my anti-virtues and values. So I would know better than to force anyone to do anything, even if I feel peer pressure to do so. And vice versa. If they're peer pressure to force me to do anything, I feel that, but please don't force me to do anything. But it's like, desperate or not. So, again, the number 2 is when the MYOB end of things, the mind your own business, you're not in a cage from the enemy forces, you're not enslaved by the bad guys, literally speaking, but you're still emotionally and spiritually and mentally annoyed. If not way worse, to say the least, that's the better end of it. Is that it could be attitudinal. It probably is attitudinal. Again, it is attitudinal, but it affects you in a way that you don't have to explain. It's not real, but it's also something that still bothers you in a really traumatic way. And it's like, yeah, everyone's different. Everyone's got their own perspective, beliefs, values, virtues. Like I do, clearly. You get everything chance to exist here. Would we say that it's not literal to do something about those feelings? Yes and no. Yes, you're not in the enemy forces camp in that trapped cage and those enslavements, those things they force you to do by the literal ways of life you want to call that. But if your trauma gets to you in a way that you don't want to offend people, and this is a weird way about seeing criticism and what people care about you or not caring about other people, not worrying about other people, not having to think about what they think about you. But as weird and agonizing our own perspectives can seem to other people, there are still our own opinions and beliefs and emotions. And so, for one thing, it affects your reality anyways, spoiler alert, because, like I said before, your wealth is your health. Your mentality can affect your physical affect mental. If you don't do something about your childhood traumas and your own agonizations, the things that you do believe in, the things that you would die for, even literally, the things that you want to resolve in your life, whether you want to take your time or not. You want to be the kind of person who genuinely cares about their life in spite of what they feel or do in reality. Because if you don't do enough in reality anyways, I guess that was supposed to be pro example for the last one. But generally speaking, you're going to want to be someone who does care about their emotions and mentalities and spiritualities even. You want to be able to care about what you believe, because if you don't, the reality, physicality will take a hit from that. And, like, call me cap on that, but think about something that you've never done because of what you believed, right? That's the simplest example I gave so far. It's like something you didn't do because you didn't believe a certain way. Like, or something, or not believing yourself so you don't do something. That already is a good simple example. This whole 40-minute video. But like, so what the absence of an action is action itself. Being able to do something doesn't have to affirm what you believe, especially if it doesn't attract what you believe. But, I mean, the actions are still important. They very much are. But I'm saying with the second example, people like me who are weird about saying why they care so much about people who disconnect things on purpose or an accident, who force connections on purpose or an accident, do people genuinely have your best interests at heart? That's not for you to decide or predict, but sometimes people who say they have the best interests at heart of your own kind, they're full of shit. And you'll know who those people are sometimes. Every once in a while, you'll be able to detect that. You'll be able to know, do they truly have my best interests at heart, or are they just saying that just to have something to prove, which they don't even get any decent to begin with. Good diss on that without saying that in public, apparently. Or in their faces, at least. But genuinely, if people do seem to want to have a good perspective and respect for others, as it's a good virtue to have, I guess you could say literally no, but not literally everybody has respect for everybody or themselves, unfortunately. But my own alternative philosophy was human stupidity and humane stupid don't exist because everyone knows something everyone doesn't, and there are a lot of people who are smarter than we realize, and people are smarter and more beautiful than they realize. I see myself as a handsome person who is also a smart person, but that's just me. I could be shooting myself in the foot if I said I weren't either of those things. But, however, and I'll probably call this in like 45 minutes, but do people generally have the intention of being good people? I'd say they do. And even if they don't, it's better to see that they do have those good intentions anyways. In that context. Not I'm going to assume that you believe that I have your best interest, how should I say so? No, but don't believe what you need to. But don't be the kind of person who's like, I trust you because I don't know any better. Maybe that's a little bit of a forced... that might be a bit of a self-projection there. I'm sorry. Sag, Tony, Sag. But... or take the L, I don't know. I'm not going to put it up there. I'm going to put the W. For those of you who know how to do that with your fingers. Okay, that's a weird way to call someone out while doing W. Can I call you a winner by saying L? Good job. Super L. Okay, but basically, I did this for 45 minutes, right? So I talked to a camera on my Unihertz Titan. Shout out to them, sponsor. I talked to my Unihertz Titan for 45 minutes. What does that tell you about how I handle things? Do I use dictation to solve all my problems? Do I make content on YouTube a little too quickly for some people to grasp? That it may seem like even if you weren't to watch every single video, which if you do watch every single video, especially the last past week or 7 days, thank you. But you don't have to do that, though. You do not have to do that. I'm good either way. I really am. I'm good about my emotional independence and my other things in life. I'm handling things way better than I realize. But But is my way of life something that has to work for everybody? Of course not. It doesn't have to be that anything I prove that works in my life and as a material or immaterial law of life could still be changed. Things could still change the more that we understand. They already have. We have technology in this current 2023 that we don't understand yet. We have technology that came about that we do understand already, and that could be a good or a bad thing. That's the old paradox. I would dare you to explore the unknowns, in spite of how fragile and humanistic. See, I didn't forget the last 000 since I started this video. I didn't forget saying that my wiry was supposed to be this video, but I didn't forget saying that. I didn't forget saying emotional context from TV shows and entertainment. I didn't forget that. I dare you That was a lot. I dare you to go into the unknown and find out for yourself what you believe in. I don't care what you can prove. I don't care what you. Well, I do care to an extent because I care about everything I used to. But try, try to find out what matters to you, no matter how vulnerable you really are, because you have more power than you realize. The vulnerabilities will in fact make you more powerful, even then.